Hey guys, tonight we head deep into the humid, murky heart of the Louisiana Bayou, a place where the cypress trees drip with Spanish moss and the water holds secrets darker than its own reflection. Imagine the air, thick and heavy, smelling of damp earth and decay. Now imagine a single piercing cry cutting through that oppressive silence, a cry that isn't human. This is a story about loyalty that transcends species, a hunt through a landscape that eats secrets for breakfast, and a crime that threatens to poison an entire community. You probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The call comes in just after dawn, when the swamp is still draped in a thick, ghostly fog. It's not a 911 call from a person, but a frantic report from a local fisherman. He says there's a dog out on Black Cypress Knoll, a patch of semi-solid ground about a mile into the marsh, and it won't stop baying. It's a sound of pure, unrelenting grief, and it's been going on since before the sun rose. Detective Miles Kincaid gets the assignment. He's a transplant from up north, a man whose crisp city suits have long since surrendered to the perpetual dampness of the Atchafalaya Basin. He still hasn't gotten used to the humidity or the insects, but he's learned to respect the swamp. He knows it's not just a backdrop, it's an active participant in everything that happens here. As his flat-bottomed boat cuts through the dark water, the air gets cooler, the smell of jasmine and rot intensifying. The fisherman was right. The sound is heartbreaking, a long, mournful howl that echoes through the trees. When he and his deputies finally reach the knoll, they see him, a magnificent bloodhound. Its long ears caked in mud, its brow furrowed in a way that seems almost human. The dog, they'll soon learn, is named Blue. He's tethered by a frayed leather leash to the base of a cypress tree, and at his feet lies the body of Dr. Eris Thorne. Eris was something of a local saint, a brilliant conservation biologist who dedicated her life to protecting this very swamp. She was tough, respected, and by all accounts beloved. Seeing her lying there, still and pale against the dark mud, sends a ripple of disbelief through the deputies. Her work often put her at odds with powerful corporate interests, and even some locals who saw the swamp as a resource to be exploited, not preserved. But murder? Nobody thought it would come to this. Kincaid crouches, his eyes scanning the scene with a practiced, detached calm. Eris is positioned strangely. She's not sprawled as if she fell. She's laid out, almost respectfully, with her hands folded over her chest. It's an immediate, jarring contradiction to the violence that must have occurred, the first twist in a case that will be full of them. The official cause of death will take time, but Kincaid sees no obvious signs of a struggle around her on the ground. The mud is disturbed, yes, but mostly by the pacing of the dog. Then he sees her hand. One of her fists is clenched tight. Using the tip of his pen, he gently coaxes the fingers open. Tucked inside her palm is a single ornate silver cufflink shaped like a stylized heron. It's impossibly clean, as if it were wiped down and placed in her hand after the fact. It's an odd, theatrical detail that feels less like a clue and more like a message. It belongs to no one Eris knew. While the forensics team begins the painstaking process of collecting evidence from a scene that is 90% water and mud, Kincaid notices something else. Tucked under a cypress root near Eris's body is a discarded, half-empty bottle of industrial-grade bleach. This is the second irony, a powerful chemical agent left next to a woman who fought passionately against pollution. It's a flagrant, almost mocking gesture. Did the killer use it to clean the scene, or was it planted to send a message about her environmental crusade? This is where the legal gears start to grind. Any evidence found here is critical, but its collection is a nightmare. Kincaid knows about the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. If his team makes a single procedural mistake in this quagmire of a crime scene, if they contaminate a sample or miss a step in the chain of custody, any evidence they discover, and anything that evidence leads to could be thrown out of court. A defense attorney would have a field day arguing that the swamp itself is one giant uncontrollable contaminant. As they work, Blue, the bloodhound, never stops watching. His mournful bays have quieted to a low guttural whine. He only looks at two things: the face of his deceased owner and the vast, impenetrable swamp stretching away from the knoll. There's a quiet debate among the deputies. Some see a heartbroken pet. Kincaid, however, sees something more. He learns from Eris's distraught colleagues that Blue wasn't just a companion. Eris had been training him for years for scent tracking, hoping to use him to find poachers. And here's the third twist, a bureaucratic gut punch. Eris was just a week away from getting Blue officially certified as a search and rescue canine. As it stands, he's just a pet. Legally, his testimony, his scent trail, is inadmissible. This leads to a classic and still unresolved legal debate. When does a dog stop being property and start being a reliable tool for law enforcement? Experts still argue whether a bloodhound's legendary sense of smell, which can detect a scent trail that's days old and submerged in water, can be considered probable cause for a search warrant without corroborating evidence. Courts across the country are split on the issue. For Kincaid, the debate isn't academic. He has a murdered local hero, a theatrical crime scene, and a silent witness who might be the only one who knows which way the killer went. The swamp has swallowed the perpetrator whole, leaving behind only a mocking cufflink, a bottle of bleach, and a dog whose grief might hold the key to everything.
The hours after the discovery of Eris Thorne's body are a study in futility. Back at the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Office, the air is thick with the smell of stale coffee and frustration. The crime scene, for all its theatricality, has yielded almost nothing. The ground, a sponge of mud and cypress needles, holds no distinct footprints other than Eris's and the frantic circles of her dog. The bleach bottle was wiped clean, a pristine piece of plastic telling no tales. The forensics report on Eris herself is equally unhelpful. No foreign DNA under her fingernails, no fibers on her clothing that don't belong. It's as if she was murdered by a phantom. Kincaid spends the day interviewing the people who topped his initial list of suspects. First up is Jean-Pierre Devereaux, the CEO of a petrochemical company that Eris had been trying to sue into oblivion over illegal dumping. Devereaux, a man with a smile as slick as an oil spill, sits in the interview room radiating smugness. He has an alibi so perfect it feels manufactured. A time-stamped video conference with a dozen lawyers that started the night before and ended well after Eris was found. It's a rock-solid, verifiable wall of corporate defense. Next is a local poacher named Cletus Riggs, a man whose traps Eris had found and reported just 2 weeks prior. Cletus is surly and uncooperative, but his alibi is even better than the CEO's. He was arrested for public intoxication the previous evening and spent the entire night in the parish drunk tank. Kincaid personally reviews the booking and release forms. It's unimpeachable. The irony is bitter. Cletus's own bad behavior has made him an innocent man. The investigation is stalling before it even begins. The killer left clues that were designed to look like clues but lead nowhere. The cufflink is a ghost object. The bleach bottle is a taunt. The placement of the body is a riddle without an answer. Kincaid feels like he's been invited to a game where the opponent set up the board, made the first move, and then vanished, leaving him to play against himself. All the while, the thought of the dog Blue gnaws at him. Eris's colleagues have taken him in, but the reports are grim. The dog is despondent, refusing to eat, doing nothing but staring at the door. Kincaid's senior deputy, a man named Pregin, who grew up hunting in these swamps, keeps pushing. Miles, he says, his Cajun accent thick as molasses. That dog saw what happened, or he smelled it. Let him run. But another deputy, a younger, by-the-book officer named Chen, is adamant. Detective, the animal isn't certified. Anything we find based on his tracking is compromised.
A defense attorney will file a motion to suppress and will be in a Daubert hearing for weeks. He's right. The Daubert standard is the legal gauntlet for evidence. Kincaid would have to prove to a judge that Blue's nose is essentially a scientific instrument, one that produces reliable, replicable results. With an uncertified dog, the odds of that are slim to none. The entire case could be built on a foundation of sand. This is the central, unresolved debate that paralyzes the investigation. Is a bloodhound's innate legendary ability enough to establish probable cause, or does it need a piece of paper from a state-sanctioned board to be considered reliable? Kincaid, a man of procedure, finds himself siding with Chen, and yet he has nothing. No leads, no witnesses, no hope. That night, unable to sleep, Kincaid finds himself staring at the evidence bag containing the silver heron cufflink. It sits on his desk, under the lamplight, gleaming. It's so clean, so deliberate. The killer wanted him to focus on it, to chase its origin, to waste time tracking down a meaningless piece of jewelry. And that's when the first real twist of the investigation hits him. What is the killer's greatest trick was also his biggest mistake. He was so focused on wiping away his DNA, his fingerprints, that he overlooked the one thing a dog cares about: scent. The next morning, Kincaid makes a decision that goes against every procedural bone in his body. He drives out to the research center where Blue is being kept. He finds the dog lying on a blanket, a picture of misery. Kincaid sits on the floor, not approaching, just waiting. After a few minutes, the dog lifts his heavy head. Kincaid pulls out the evidence bag with the cufflink, but he also has the small, sealed bag containing the cotton swab the forensics team used on it. The swab had tested negative for human DNA. It was officially a dead end. He carefully opens the bag with the swab. He doesn't offer it to the dog, he just holds it in his open palm. Blue's ears twitch. He gets to his feet, his posture changing from lethargic to alert in a fraction of a second. He ignores the shiny cufflink entirely. He walks over to Kincaid and delicately sniffs the cotton swab. This is the odd, incredible detail that changes everything. Blue isn't smelling metal or fabric. He's smelling the ghost of a scent left on the tool that was meant to prove the clue was sterile. The killer, in his meticulous effort to remove his biological trace, couldn't remove the volatile scent molecules that had aerolized and settled deep into the cotton fibers. It's almost a perfect irony. The cleaning process itself is what preserved the one clue that mattered. Blue lets out one single sharp bark. It's not a howl of grief. It's a sound of recognition, of purpose. He looks at Kincaid and then turns his head and stares intently out the window towards the deep swamp. The direction is southwest, not toward any known road or town. He pulls at the leash now held by one of Eris's friends. The message is unmistakable. He's out there, and I know the way. Kincaid looks at Prejean, who has a slow, knowing smile spreading across his face. Then he glances at Chen, who just shakes his head in disbelief. The debate is over. Procedure has failed. It's time for instinct. Get the gear, Kincaid says, his voice low but firm. GPS trackers, water, rations for 2 days, and get a long lead for our witness.
The air is already a thick, wet blanket by the time they return to Black Cypress Knoll. Kincaid, Prejean, Yin, and 2 other deputies stand on the muddy ground, the silence of the swamp broken only by the buzz of insects and the quiet lapping of water against the boat. Blue stands at the center of it all, a creature transformed. The grease-stricken pet is gone, replaced by a working dog of singular focus. His tail is held high, his body tense with anticipation. Prejean holds the long 30-foot lead, giving Blue room to work. Kincaid stands beside him, holding the cotton swab in a pair of sterile tweezers. He presents it to Blue one last time. The dog takes a long, deep sniff, his nostrils flaring as he processes the complex olfactory data.
It's a process far more sophisticated than any machine Kincaid has ever seen. The dog's brain is cross-referencing this single faint scent against the millions of others in the humid air. The decay, the flora, the water, the lingering smell of the forensics team. Then Blue lowers his head. His nose hovers an inch above the mud, sweeping back and forth like a minesweeper. He circles the spot where Eris's body was found, ignoring the lingering scent of her and the deputies. He's filtering everything, hunting for that one specific alien smell from the swab. After a full minute, he stops. He lets out a low boof and takes off, not with a frantic dash, but with a steady, determined pace that pulls Prejean along with him. He heads southwest, plunging directly into a section of the marsh that looks impassable. For the first hour, the going is brutal. They slog through knee-deep water that smells of sulfur and peat. Cypress knees, hard as concrete, lie hidden just below the surface, threatening to snap an ankle. Mosquitoes descend in whining clouds, a constant, irritating presence. Yin, the by-the-book deputy, keeps checking his GPS. Detective, we're not on any trail. We're just heading into the thick of it. The dog is on the trail, Prejean grunts, skillfully navigating a tangle of mangrove roots while keeping the lead from snagging. Just follow the dog. And Blue is relentless. He never hesitates. His nose stays down, his gait steady. Every so often he stops, lifts his head to test the air, and then corrects his course by a few degrees before setting off again. He's not following footprints. He's following a ghostly trail of scent particles left in the air and on the foliage, a trail completely invisible to human senses. About 2 miles in, Blue leads them to a small, almost hidden inlet. Here they find the first piece of corroborating evidence. Half submerged in the brackish water is a single muddy boot print on a flat stone that isn't from a standard issue police or work boot. It's from a specialized tactical boot, the kind favored by survivalists and ex-military. It's a small victory, but it's huge. It proves Blue isn't just on a random walk. Chen marks the GPS coordinate, a flicker of grudging respect in his eyes. The real surprise, however, comes another mile deeper. Blue suddenly veers off his southwestern path and leads them east toward a stagnant, algae-choked tributary. The smell here changes. The natural scent of the swamp is overpowered by a harsh chemical odor, metallic and acrid. Blue becomes agitated, whining and circling a specific patch of water. Kincaid motions for the team to stop. He pulls out a water testing kit from his pack. The results are immediate and shocking. The water is heavily contaminated with mercury and other toxic heavy metals, levels far exceeding any industrial accident. This isn't a slow leak, it's a deliberate, concentrated dump site. This is the first major twist of the chase. They came looking for a killer's hideout and found an environmental crime scene instead. The motive for Eris's murder suddenly sharpens into terrifying focus. She wasn't killed just because she was suing a corporation. She must have found this specific site. This wasn't about profit margins, it was about covering up a felony so severe it could bring down an entire company and send its executives to federal prison. In fact, a case from the 1990s, United States versus Weizenhoff, established a precedent where 2 wastewater treatment plant managers were sentenced to prison under the Clean Water Act for knowingly discharging pollutants. The law has teeth, and Eris was about to use them. The odd detail here is the location. The dumping is happening in a place so remote and difficult to access that it makes no logistical sense. Why haul barrels of toxic waste miles into an impassable swamp when there are thousands of acres of more accessible, unmonitored land? It suggests the person doing the dumping knows the swamp intimately, not as a convenience, but as a fortress. This discovery also brings up an unresolved debate in environmental law, the isolated wetlands controversy. For years, legal experts have argued whether the Clean Water Act protects wetlands that are not directly connected to navigable waters. The Supreme Court has gone back and forth on the issue, creating a legal gray area. A savvy corporate lawyer could argue this polluted tributary, deep in the swamp, falls outside federal jurisdiction. It's possible Aris was killed not just because of what she found, but because she was the only person with the scientific clout to prove this isolated spot was hydrologically connected to the entire basin, making the pollution a federal crime. Blue, having shown them the dump site, now seems distressed. He keeps sniffing the air, then the ground, then the air again. He's picking up the killer's trail, but it's mingling with the chemical stench, confusing him. The killer's scent is here, but it's old, mixed with the poison. The trail they were following isn't fresh. Suddenly, Blue lets out a sharp bark and takes off again, this time at a faster clip, back toward the southwest. Prejean struggles to keep up. It's as if the dog has processed a new piece of information. The killer didn't just pass through here, he worked here. And he knew this would be a distraction. They have wasted precious time. As they pick up the pace, slogging through the murky water, Kincaid feels a chill that has nothing to do with the dampness. Their quarry isn't just running. He knows he's being followed. The hunt has just become a chase.
The discovery of the toxic dump site changes the atmosphere of the hunt completely. The air, already thick with humidity, now feels charged with a new kind of menace. It's no longer a simple pursuit, it's a race. Blue, picking up the trail again, moves with a renewed urgency that borders on frantic. The trail he follows now is fresher, the scent particles more concentrated. Their quarry is close, and he's moving fast. The team pushes deeper into the swamp, the terrain growing more treacherous with every step. The solid ground has all but vanished, replaced by a maze of murky channels and floating islands of vegetation. Razor-edged sawgrass tears at their clothes and skin. Kincaid feels a prickle on the back of his neck, a primal instinct that tells him he's being watched. He scans the dense canopy of cypress and tupelo trees, but sees nothing but shifting leaves and draping moss. It's a feeling he can't shake. This is where the killer's game truly begins. An hour into this renewed chase, Prejean, who has been reading the subtle signs of the swamp his entire life, suddenly stops. He points to a thin, almost invisible strand of muscadine vine stretched taut between two cypress knees, about 6 inches off the ground. It's been deliberately tied. The team had stepped over it minutes ago without a second thought. He knows we're here. Prejean says, his voice a low whisper. This is a tripwire, a signal. He follows the vine with his eyes to where it disappears around a large tupelo tree. On the other side, it would have been attached to something. A stack of pebbles on a piece of bark, a hanging branch, anything that would be disturbed when the vine was tripped. A silent alarm. The first twist hits Kincaid like a physical blow. They haven't been hunting. They've been herded. The killer has known about them for miles. This changes the legal complexion of the chase entirely. A prosecutor could now argue the concept of flight as evidence of guilt. In cases like Illinois versus Wardlow, the Supreme Court affirmed that a suspect's unprovoked flight in a high-crime area can be a pertinent factor in determining reasonable suspicion. Here, the killer's actions go far beyond simple flight. He is actively, intelligently, and systematically trying to evade them. His elaborate deceptions are a confession in their own right, an admission of a guilty mind. As if on cue, Blue starts to act strangely. He slows, his confident trot breaking into a confused, zigzagging pattern. He whines, lifting his nose from the ground to the air, then back again. They've come to a clearing where the stench of death hangs heavy. In the center of it lies the carcass of a wild boar, days old and swarming with flies. It's a massive olfactory distraction, a wall of scent meant to overwhelm and confuse the dog. The killer, knowing he was being tracked by a scent hound, has weaponized the natural cycle of decay. For a tense minute, it seems to be working. Blue circles the carcass, clearly distressed by the overwhelming smell. Chen looks at Kincaid, his old skepticism returning. Maybe this is it. He found an animal, the trail ends. But Prejean shakes his head. watch him. Blue stops circling. He stands perfectly still, his body rigid. Then he does something incredible. He ignores the dead boar and casts his head in a wide arc, sniffing the air above the carcass. He's filtering out the dominant smell of rot to isolate the fainter, fresher human scent that was layered on top of it. The killer must have dragged the boar here and handled it. After a moment, Blue lets out a decisive bark and charges off to the right. Trail reacquired. The second irony is plain. The killer's clever trap has only served to prove how extraordinary his pursuer truly is. They follow Blue for another half-mile when they find the most unsettling clue yet. Hanging from a low-hanging branch, tied with a piece of twine, is a small, crudely carved wooden bird. It's no bigger than Kincaid's thumb, whittled from a piece of cypress wood. It's an odd, almost ritualistic detail. It's not a functional tool or a piece of discarded trash. It's a marker, a symbol. It feels personal, like a signature. It tells Kincaid two things. Their man is a survivalist with time to engage in crafts, and he is supremely confident, almost arrogant. He's not just running, he's marking his territory, leaving behind folk art totems as a taunt. This is when Kincaid understands the full scope of the killer's strategy. The tripwire, the scent trap, the marker. These aren't the actions of a man in a panic. He's been leading them on a carefully curated tour of his domain, and that feeling of being watched returns with a vengeance. The third twist lands with chilling certainty. The killer has almost certainly doubled back. He led them past the tripwire and then looped around to observe his pursuers from a hidden vantage point. He knows exactly how many of them there are. He knows they have a dog. He's been studying them. The hunters have become the observed. This changes the legal complexion of the chase entirely. A prosecutor could now argue the concept of flight as evidence of guilt. In Illinois versus Wardlow, the Supreme Court affirmed that a suspect's unprovoked flight in a high-crime area can be a pertinent factor in determining reasonable suspicion. Here, the killer's actions go far beyond simple flight. He is actively, intelligently, and systematically trying to evade them. His elaborate deceptions are a confession in their own right, an admission of a guilty mind. Then there was the question about how they would respond to this elaborate system of deception. They stood in the oppressive humidity, the carved bird swinging gently in the breeze. They were exhausted, soaked in sweat and swamp water, and now profoundly unnerved. The 10-mile trek had transformed from a linear pursuit into a complex game of cat and mouse on a living chessboard. And their opponent not only knows the board better than they do, he's moving the pieces.
The sight of the small carved bird marks a turning point. The chase has become personal. The killer isn't just a fugitive. He's a presence, an intelligence that seems to flow through the swamp itself. Kincaid makes a command decision. They need to change tactics. Trying to outsmart this man in his own element is a fool's errand. They have to rely on their one unique advantage, the unwavering, undeceivable nose of the dog. From now on, we don't stop, Kincaid says, his voice low and tight. We don't second guess, we don't analyze. We just follow the dog, full speed. It's a grueling pace. They crash through sawgrass, stumble through hidden channels, and haul themselves over fallen cypress logs. The world narrows to the 30-foot lead connecting Prejean to Blue. The dog seems to sense the shift in strategy, his pace becoming even more relentless. He's no longer just tracking, he's pulling them, a biological engine fueled by a singular primal purpose. Miles blur together. The sun, a hazy white disk in the humid sky, begins its slow descent, casting long, distorted shadows through the trees. The swamp transforms around them, the familiar greens and browns deepening into shades of purple and black. The sounds change too. The daytime buzz of insects gives way to the deep croak of bullfrogs and the chirps of nocturnal creatures. Just as true darkness threatens to halt their progress, Blue leads them out of the dense marsh and onto something unexpected. An old, forgotten levee, now overgrown with weeds and brambles.
but it provides a clear, straight path. They are finally out of the muck. Looking back, Kincaid estimates they've covered nearly 10 miles since leaving Black Cypress Knoll, an almost superhuman feat of endurance for both man and animal. Up ahead, through the gloom, they see a faint, flickering light. As they draw closer, they realize they've stumbled upon a small, isolated community, a handful of stilt houses and weathered shacks clustered on the banks of a slow-moving bayou. It's a place that doesn't appear on any modern map, a forgotten pocket of the world where people live by their own rules. The smell of wood smoke and frying fish hangs in the air. Blue doesn't hesitate. He pulls them directly toward one of the smaller, more isolated shacks at the far edge of the settlement. The shack is dark, but a thin curl of smoke rises from its crooked tin chimney. Prejean shortens the lead, and Blue goes rigid, his nose pointed directly at the front door. A low growl rumbles in his chest. This is it. Kincaid signals for silence. He, Prejean, and Chen move forward, weapons drawn, while the other two deputies hang back to cover the perimeter. The front door of the shack is flimsy, made of mismatched planks. Kincaid can hear movement inside, a floorboard creaking, a soft thud. He doesn't bother knocking. A swift, hard kick is all it takes to splinter the jam. "Sheriff's office! Show me your hands!" he yells, flooding the single room with the beam of his tactical flashlight. The room is empty, but the wood stove is still warm, and a half-eaten plate of food sits on a small crude table. A sleeping bag is unrolled on the floor. Their man was here just moments ago. He must have slipped out the back as they approached. Kincaid's light sweeps across the room, revealing the life of a recluse. Shelves are lined with mason jars of preserved food. Animal traps hang from the walls. And on the table, next to the plate, lies a half-finished wooden bird identical to the one they found in the swamp. This is undoubtedly their man. But then Chen's light flash beam lands on something else, and the first twist of the scene unfolds. Tucked into the corner is a sophisticated shortwave radio setup, complete with a solar panel charging system. This is not the equipment of a simple off-the-grid survivalist. This is for long-range, untraceable communication. The killer wasn't a lone wolf. He's been reporting to someone. This is a critical legal moment. Under the plain view doctrine, officers can legally seize evidence of a crime without a warrant if they are lawfully in a location and the object's incriminating nature is immediately apparent. Kincaid was justified in entering the shack under the principle of hot pursuit. The radio, sitting in plain view, is now admissible evidence. It elevates the crime from a single murder to a potential conspiracy. As Prejean checks the back window, which has been forced open, Kincaid notices an odd detail on the floor. Near the sleeping bag are several deep parallel scratch marks in the wooden planks. They look like something heavy was dragged. But it's not the marks themselves that are strange. It's the fine, shimmery powder within them. He touches it. It's cold and slightly greasy. It's graphite powder, a dry lubricant. Why would a man living in a swamp shack need industrial-grade graphite? The answer clicks into place with a horrifying jolt, delivering the second, more terrifying twist. Kincaid remembers the silver hair and cufflink. He remembers the CEO of the petrochemical company, Devereaux, and his slick corporate presentation. He'd seen that hair and logo before. It was the symbol of Devereaux's company. But it wasn't just the cufflink. Aris had been an avid bird watcher. What if she was trying to leave a different kind of clue? He pulls out his phone and, miraculously finding a bar of service on the levee, does a quick search for Devereaux Petrochemicals and graphite. The results are immediate. The company is a leading manufacturer of specialized graphite gaskets used in high-pressure chemical pipelines. The killer wasn't just dumping waste. He was a company employee, likely a field technician or security contractor. And the scratches on the floor? He must have been storing pipeline components here. This new information triggers a frantic and unresolved debate among the team. Who is the primary target now? The man they've been chasing, a hired gun now on the run, Or the corporate CEO with the airtight alibi who is clearly the mastermind? Legally, proving conspiracy is notoriously difficult. Prosecutors must show an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime. The radio is a good start, but it doesn't name names. Suddenly, a piece of paper on the table catches Kincaid's eye. It's a hand-drawn map. It shows the swamp, the location of the shack, and the toxic dump site. But it also shows something else. A second target. A red circle is drawn around a location further down the bayou, labeled with 2 letters, RW. Next to it is a time, midnight. Kincaid looks at his watch. It's 10:30 p.m. The third twist is a gut punch. The killer isn't just fleeing, he's on his way to his next job. And RW? Kincaid knows who that is. Robert Wingate, a retired EPA agent who had been advising Aris on her lawsuit against Devereaux. They weren't chasing a killer into hiding. They were racing him to his next victim.
The discovery of the map injects a fresh dose of adrenaline into the exhausted team. The cryptic RW and the midnight deadline transform the operation from a pursuit into a rescue mission. Robert Wingate, the retired EPA agent, lives in a modest house on the outskirts of a small town called Bell River, about 15 miles down the bayou from the shack. There's no way to get there by road in time. Their only chance is the water. He's got a boat, Prigozhin says, pointing toward the murky water behind the shack. Hidden under a camouflage tarp is a small, powerful skiff with a mud motor, a specialized engine designed for shallow, vegetation-choked waterways. It's fast and quiet. Their own flat-bottomed boat is miles away, back where their chase began. This presents Kincaid with a significant legal and ethical choice, a classic example of the exigent circumstances exception to the warrant requirement. The rule allows law enforcement to take actions without a warrant when there is an immediate risk of harm to the public or to destroy evidence. Taking the suspect's boat is a clear violation of property rights, but the alternative, letting a killer reach his next victim, is unthinkable. The debate is short. "We're taking his boat," Kincaid orders. As they prepare the skiff, Kincaid notices something that sends another chill down his spine. Lying on the damp floor of the boat is a discarded energy bar wrapper, but next to it is a small leather-bound book. It's a volume of poetry by Thoreau. This is the first deeply personal, humanizing detail they found, and it's a jarring contradiction. Their killer, this methodical survivalist and corporate hitman, reads transcendentalist poetry. It's a chilling reminder that monsters are rarely one-dimensional. This man isn't just a brute. He possesses a complex, perhaps fractured, inner life. With Prigozhin at the helm, the skiff roars to life and they tear down the dark bayou. Blue, who had been focused and intense, now seems to share their anxiety. He stands at the bow, his nose in the wind, letting out low whines as if urging them to go faster. The swamp, which had been their adversary, is now their highway. The moon provides just enough light to see the silhouettes of the cypress trees flashing past them. The journey gives Kincaid time to piece together the larger conspiracy. The trail no longer leads to the man in the swamp, but to the man in the boardroom. He radios back to the sheriff's office, laying out the new theory. Aris Thorne didn't just stumble upon illegal dumping. She and Robert Wingate must have uncovered a specific, ongoing operation. The graphite powder in the shack suggests the killer wasn't just dumping old waste. He was likely involved in maintaining or even building a secret illegal pipeline to discharge toxins directly from a Devereaux facility into the heart of the swamp. This is where the case explodes in scope. It's no longer just a violation of the Clean Water Act. It's a full-blown criminal conspiracy under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Originally designed to prosecute the mafia, the RICO Act has been successfully used against corporations engaged in patterns of criminal activity. If Kincaid can prove that Devereaux Petrochemicals used its resources to commit murder, cover up environmental crimes, and intimidate witnesses, he can take down the entire organization. The first irony of the section becomes clear. In his attempt to silence one woman, Devereaux may have exposed his entire company to federal racketeering charges. As they race against the clock, An unresolved question nags at Kincaid. Why use such a high-risk operative? A man this skilled, this intelligent, must be expensive and hard to control. Why not just use some low-level thug? The answer, he suspects, lies in the swamp itself. Devereaux needed someone who could not only eliminate threats, but also manage the clandestine infrastructure hidden within the unforgiving landscape. He didn't hire a hitman. He hired a warden for his secret, toxic kingdom. Their destination isn't Wingate's house. Kincaid realizes the killer won't risk a confrontation in a residential area. He'll draw Wingate out. He looks at the hand-drawn map again. The red circle isn't on Wingate's home. It's on a nearby landmark, an old decommissioned corporate depot on the edge of the swamp, owned by a subsidiary of Devereaux Petrochemicals. It's the perfect trap. Secluded, private property, and a place the killer knows intimately. They arrive at the depot with minutes to spare. It's a ghostly place, a series of rusting warehouses and storage tanks surrounded by a chain-link fence. The main gate is locked. Prejean cuts the engine, and they drift in silence toward a dilapidated pier. The only sounds are the lapping of water and the hum of insects. There's a single light on in a small security office near the gate. Blue is the first to signal they're in the right place. He strains at the leash, his body pointed not at the main buildings, but at a large, dark pipeline that runs from the depot directly into the swamp. The second twist of the scene is the sheer audacity of it. The illegal pipeline isn't some hidden, buried secret. It's right here, painted to look like an old piece of decommissioned equipment. It's hidden in plain sight. Kincaid spots two vehicles parked near the office. One is Robert Wingate's dusty sedan. The other is a sleek black town car that screams corporate lawyer. He wasn't just meeting Wingate, he was meeting his boss. Suddenly, the plan becomes clear. This wasn't a hit, it was a setup. Devereaux was going to hand over his rogue employee to Wingate, playing the part of the responsible CEO cleaning house. He would sacrifice his pawn to save his kingdom. But where is the killer? The depot is silent. Too silent. Then Chen, using a pair of night vision binoculars, spots him. He's not in the office. He's not waiting in ambush. He's perched on top of one of the massive storage tanks, a high-powered rifle resting on a bipod. This is the third, terrifying twist. The survivalist poet wasn't being sacrificed. He was never the pawn. He was the queen. He lured both Wingate and his own boss, Devereaux, to this location. He was tying up all the loose ends. The man they'd been chasing across 10 miles of swamp wasn't just a hired gun trying to escape. He was the mastermind's shadow, and he was about to wipe the entire board clean.
The scene at the depot is a tableau of immense tension, frozen under the pale moonlight. Below, in the brightly lit security office, you have Robert Wingate, the retired EPA agent, and Jean-Pierre Devereaux, the CEO, likely negotiating the surrender of a supposedly rogue employee. Above them, perched like a gargoyle on the massive storage tank, is a man they know only as the survivalist, the killer, with a rifle aimed directly at the office. And on the periphery, hidden in the shadows of the pier, is Kincaid's team, the unexpected variable in this deadly equation. Kincaid realizes the killer's genius. He has engineered a situation with no good outcomes for his enemies. If Kincaid's team storms the office, the sniper has a clear shot. If they try to take out the sniper first, the commotion will alert Devereaux, who could use Wingate as a hostage or simply escape. They are caught in a perfect tactical trap. This is where the legal concept of imminent threat becomes visceral and real. The law allows officers to use deadly force when they have a reasonable belief that a suspect poses an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm to others. The man on the tank isn't just a threat, he's a countdown. Kincaid has a legal justification to act, but not the tactical opportunity. He turns to the one member of his team who doesn't operate on sight lines or tactical angles. He looks at Blue. The dog is still laser focused on the pipeline, the source of the original scent that started this entire chase. The pipe runs from the swamp, under the fence, and snakes its way through the depot. passing directly beside the security office before connecting to the base of the very storage tank where the sniper is perched. An idea, born of desperation, begins to form in Kincaid's mind. It's a wild, unpredictable plan. "Prajin," he whispers, "can you get Blue to follow that pipe? Stay low and quiet?" Prajin nods, understanding immediately. He'll follow the scent anywhere. While two deputies create a subtle diversion on the far side of the depot, a thrown rock, a snapped twig, just enough to draw the sniper's attention for a split second, Prajin unclips Blue's lead. He points the pipe and gives a low, single-word command: "Seek." This is the first major twist of the climax. Blue, the hero of this story, is unleashed. He moves with a silence that is breathtaking for an animal his size. He slips under the fence, his body a dark shadow against the darker metal of the pipe. He isn't running or barking, he's stalking. He follows the concentrated scent trail along the pipeline, a path that leads him like a fuse toward the heart of the operation. Inside the office, the negotiation must be getting heated. Voices are raised, though the words are muffled. Devereaux likely believes he's in control, offering up his fall guy to a self-righteous federal agent. The irony is staggering. He's sitting in a glass box, being watched by his own executioner. Blue reaches the security office. He pauses at the door, sniffing the air, then continues along the pipe. He is now directly below the sniper's position. The sniper, his attention momentarily diverted by the noise from the deputies, hasn't noticed the silent approach of the dog. This is where the odd, almost unbelievable detail of the night occurs. As Blue passes a junction in the pipeline, he bumps against a large pressure release valve. The valve, old and corroded, and likely weakened by the very chemicals it carried, gives way with a sudden, loud hiss. A plume of foul-smelling vapor erupts into the air. It's not an explosion. It's a distraction, but a perfect one. The sniper, startled by the sudden noise directly beneath him, instinctively looks down. For a fraction of a second, his focus is broken. That's all Kincaid needs. From the shadows of the pier, he has a clear shot. He doesn't aim to kill. He aims for the rifle. His single, silenced shot rings out, striking the sniper's weapon and sending it clattering onto the metal roof of the tank. The sniper is disarmed. At the same moment, the hiss of the valve alerts the men in the office. The door flies open, and Devereaux and Wingate stare out in confusion. Kincaid and his team move in, emerging from the darkness. "Sheriff's office! Nobody move!" The second twist is the reaction. Devereaux, the powerful CEO, immediately puts his hands up, his face a mask of shock and indignation. But the survivalist on the tank, the supposed mastermind of this final act, does something unexpected. He doesn't try to run. He doesn't fight. He simply sits down, looks at the chaos below, and begins to laugh, a soft, wary chuckle that carries across the silent depot. His game is over, and he seems almost relieved. The third and final twist comes during the arrest. As Chen cuffs the sniper, he finally gets a clear look at the man's face. He's not the hardened mercenary they imagined. He looks more like a disillusioned academic with intelligent eyes and a tired expression. Pinned to the inside of his jacket is an old faded ID card. The name is Dr. Alistair Finch. A quick search reveals the truth. Finch wasn't a corporate goon. He was a brilliant chemical engineer, one of the original designers of Devereaux's chemical processes. Years ago, he had tried to blow the whistle on the company's illegal dumping practices and was fired, discredited, and ruined. This reframes the entire narrative. Finch wasn't a killer for hire. He was a man seeking vengeance, using the very system that destroyed him as his weapon. He murdered Aris because she was getting too close to exposing his operation before he was ready. He led the police on a chase to buy time, and his final act wasn't about tying up loose ends. It was about getting every guilty party, the woman who would have been the hero, the CEO who ruined him, and the government agent who failed to help him years ago, all in one place. He was staging a dark, elaborate play, and he was the sole author. The unresolved legal debate that will follow this case for years is fascinating. Can a person's long-term victimhood be considered a mitigating factor in their own subsequent crimes? Legal systems struggle with this. While imperfect self-defense can sometimes reduce a murder charge to manslaughter, there's no real framework for vengeance as a mitigating circumstance. Finch's lawyers will argue that he was a product of corporate malfeasance, a man pushed beyond the brink. The prosecution will argue that his actions were those of a cold, calculating killer regardless of his motive. In the end, Blue, the dog who started it all, stands beside Prigine, panting softly. He looks at the cuffed men to the dark swamp, his work finally done. He didn't just track a killer across 10 miles of unforgiving wilderness. He followed a scent of injustice from a single, grieving howl on a misty knoll to this final dramatic standoff, unraveling a conspiracy that would have remained buried forever in the Louisiana mud. He was a silent witness, the relentless pursuer, and ultimately the agent of a hero's justice. The story doesn't simply end with the click of handcuffs. It settles, like the late-night fog, over the community it scarred. The trials of Jean-Pierre Devereaux and Alistair Finch would become a media spectacle, a complex legal battleground where corporate greed and personal tragedy were put on public display. Devereaux's alibi for the night of the murder held up, but the weight of the RICO charges, backed by evidence from the depot and the radio logs from Finch's shack, was too much to bear. His corporate empire crumbled under the weight of federal indictments. Finch, the vengeful ghost of the swamp, presented a far more complicated problem for the justice system. A man whose horrific actions were born from a place of profound injury. His trial raised uncomfortable questions about how many victims there truly were in this sordid tale. And in the middle of it all, there was Blue. He was never certified as an official canine unit. His contributions to the case were relegated to anecdotal heroics in the press rather than official testimony in court. But the people of the Atchafalaya Basin knew. They knew it was his loyalty, his intelligence, his unwavering spirit that had navigated the moral and literal swamps to bring the truth into the light. He was adopted by Detective Kincaid, spending his remaining years not chasing phantoms through the marsh, but basking in the sun on a warm porch, a silent, furry testament to the idea that sometimes the purest form of justice doesn't carry a badge or a gavel, but simply follows a scent, wherever it may lead, for as long as it takes.